From Rom Com to PowerPoint, a breakup story. Full story included. I need you to imagine the slow, cinematic collapse of something I thought was unbreakable. Like watching a favorite mug crack in slow motion while you're holding it and trying to pretend the crack is just a new design. That's the energy here. This is the story of a relationship that started like a rom-com montage and ended like a midnight infomercial for regret. And I'm telling it in one long, continuous breath because that's how it felt. One long, escalating exhale of disbelief. It began with the small, stupid things that feel charming in the beginning and poisonous later. We met at a bookstore of all places, which sounds like a line from a movie and not the reality of two people awkwardly reaching for the same copy of a paperback. She laughed at my terrible joke about the author's footnote, and I laughed because she laughed, and that was the first time I felt like maybe I'd found someone who would laugh at my bad jokes forever. We had coffee, then dinner, then 1,000 tiny rituals, a shared playlist, a favorite bench in the park, a nickname that stuck like gum under a table. I started saving screenshots of ring designs like a man who had already decided the ending. I told myself I was being romantic. I told my friends I was being practical. I was both. The first real crack was almost invisible. She started taking longer showers. Not the kind of long showers where you're luxuriating in steam and thinking about nothing, the kind where the water runs and the clock keeps moving and you begin to suspect the person inside is having a private life you're not invited to. When I asked, she said she was decompressing. I nodded like a good boyfriend. I didn't ask the follow-up questions because I wanted to be the kind of person who trusted. Trust is a virtue until it becomes a blindfold. Then came the small lies that are never small. She'd tell me she was at work until 9, then post a photo at a rooftop bar at 8. She'd say she was running errands and then show up with a new dress and a story about a sale. I told myself people have lives. I told myself I was being paranoid. But paranoia is a symptom, not a diagnosis, and the symptom kept getting louder. I started noticing patterns. The same lipstick on different nights, the same laugh in different places, the same name that made her eyes flicker for a second before she looked away. Derek. The name was a ghost that kept appearing in the margins of our life. When I finally asked about Derek, I expected denial, confusion, maybe a joke. What I got was a shrug and a sentence that felt like a match to dry tinder. Derek is just someone I hang out with. Just, the word landed like a stone. I asked for clarity. She offered vagueness. I asked for honesty. She offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. That's when the argument started, not the loud, cinematic kind, but the slow, grinding kind that wears you down. We argued about time, about priorities, about whether a relationship is a contract or a suggestion. She said she needed space. I said I needed presence. She said I was suffocating. I said I was trying to breathe. The breakup itself was not dramatic in the way I'd imagined. There were no raised voices in a public place, no slammed doors that echoed for days. Instead, it was a Tuesday night with a PowerPoint. Yes, a PowerPoint. She sat me down like a CEO delivering bad news and opened her laptop. The slides were titled in bold, "Reasons You'll Miss Me." There were charts. There was a pie graph labeled "Fun Percentage." There were bullet points that read like a marketing deck. Adventurous, spontaneous, unpredictable. I watched my relationship become a product pitch, and I felt like I was being sold a used car with a fresh coat of paint. She explained that she didn't believe in monogamy the way I did. She explained that she liked options. She explained that Derek was a contingency plan, a hedge against boredom. She said it with the calmness of someone describing the weather. I remember thinking in the middle of that calm that I had been living with a stranger who had been practicing a different language of love. I tried to be rational. I tried to negotiate. She handed me a list of terms like a lawyer. I left with my dignity intact and my heart in pieces. After the breakup, the world turned into a collage of petty cruelties and performative grief. She posted a montage on social media set to a song that made me sound like the villain. The clips were edited so that my worst moments were highlighted and her best moments were cinematic. Strangers commented with unsolicited advice. Friends texted with opinions that felt like verdicts. I woke up to a package on my doorstep, a single sock, clean, folded, with a note that said, "You left this." It was a joke, I suppose, but jokes are knives when you're still bleeding. She escalated in ways that were petty and theatrical. There was the time she showed up at my favorite coffee shop with Derek, both of them smiling like they were in a commercial for Moving On. They ordered caramel macchiatos and sat in the window, basking in the sunlight like a staged tableau. I sat at a corner table and pretended not to notice, but I noticed everything: the way she laughed at his jokes, the way he touched her hand, the way the barista gave them a free pastry like a reward for their audacity. My friends said I should confront them. My therapist said I should set boundaries. I did neither. I sipped my coffee and felt like a ghost in my own life. Then came the mail, not bills, not letters, but curated artifacts of a relationship that had been weaponized. A half-burned candle with a note for ambience, a Polaroid of us at a concert with the caption, "Good Times," a playlist titled "For When You Miss Me." Each item was a breadcrumb trail designed to keep me looking back. I started to feel stalked by nostalgia. Nostalgia is a clever predator. It disguises itself as warmth while it chews away at your resolve. I tried to fight back in the only way that felt honest to me, by reclaiming my narrative. I made a playlist of my own, but instead of sad ballads, I filled it with songs that made me laugh. I deleted photos that hurt. I unfollowed accounts that were poison. I wrote a long, messy journal entry that I never sent, where I cataloged every small kindness she had shown me and every small cruelty she had inflicted. Writing it down made it less like a wound and more like a map. Maps are useful. They tell you where you've been and sometimes where you might go. But the universe apparently had other plans for my healing process. It decided to make the breakup theatrical. At a mutual friend's party, she arrived with a ferret in her purse. Yes, a ferret. The animal was calm, curious, and somehow more emotionally stable than the humans in the room. She introduced it as Mischief, and Mischief proceeded to climb onto my lap as if to claim territory. People laughed. I laughed too, because what else do you do when life hands you a ferret and a fresh wound? The ferret looked at me with tiny, beady eyes and then at her. And I felt like I was watching a silent film where the animal understood the plot better than the actors. The revenge phase is a strange thing. It's not always about retaliation. Sometimes it's about reclaiming dignity. I posted a photo of myself at sunrise with a caption that read, "New chapter." It got a handful of likes and a comment from an ex who said, "Good for you." I wanted to scream that social media is a highlight reel and not a truth machine, but I didn't. Instead, I went for a run and let the pavement absorb my anger. Running is a primitive therapy. You put one foot in front of the other and hope the rhythm drowns out the noise. She tried to pull me back in with a handwritten letter that arrived like a relic from a more earnest era. The letter said in looping script that she had made a mistake and missed me. It was dramatic, sincere, and oddly specific. It also had a grocery list on the back: milk, eggs, bread. The juxtaposition of romance and domesticity made me laugh until I cried. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I kept the grocery list on the fridge for a week as a reminder that life is both mundane and theatrical. There were moments of absurdity that felt like the universe's way of testing my sense of humor. I ran into her at a bookstore, the same bookstore where we met, and she was there with Derek, both of them browsing the travel section. She looked up, saw me, and smiled like we were characters in a sitcom who had just crossed paths for a laugh track. Derek waved. I waved back like a man who had practiced his wave in the mirror. We exchanged pleasantries that were polite and hollow. Later, I found out she had recommended a book to Derek that she had once recommended to me. The book was about reinvention. I bought a copy for myself and read it on the subway, feeling like I was trying to learn how to be a new person from someone else's footnotes. Healing is not linear. It's a messy, sideways crawl. There were nights when I would lie awake and replay conversations, trying to find the exact moment the script changed. There were mornings when I would wake up and feel lighter, as if the air had shifted. I started to notice small things again: the way sunlight hit the kitchen counter, the sound of rain on the window, the smell of coffee that wasn't associated with an argument. I took up small rituals that were mine: a Saturday morning walk, a new recipe, a plant that I kept alive despite my track record with flora. Plants are honest, they either thrive or they don't, and that clarity was comforting. Friends were both a balm and a battlefield. Some of them were patient listeners who let me rant for hours and then offered perspective like a cool breeze. Others were tired of the drama and wanted me to move on faster than I was ready to. One friend, bless him, staged an intervention that involved a karaoke night where I had to sing songs that were not about heartbreak. I sang badly, laughed harder than I had in months, and realized that joy can be a muscle you have to exercise. Another friend introduced me to a woman who liked terrible puns and terrible coffee, and we bonded over both. Small connections started to stitch the edges of my life back together. There were setbacks. I saw her name pop up on my phone and felt a jolt that was physical. I deleted the number and then, in a moment of weakness, saved it again. I told myself I was being practical, that maybe one day we could be friends. Then I remembered the PowerPoint and the pie chart and the ferret, and I deleted the number for good. Deleting a number is a ritual of finality. It's a small, decisive act that says, "This chapter is closed." It felt like ripping off a bandage slowly and then finally pulling it free. One of the strangest parts of the aftermath was the way strangers became commentators on my life. People who had never met either of us had opinions about who was right and who was wrong. Social media turned our private mess into public theater. I learned to stop explaining myself. Explanations are often just invitations for more questions. Instead, I started to tell a different story, the one where I survived and learned and grew. That story was less dramatic but more honest. Time did what time always does, it softened the edges. The sharp, immediate pain dulled into a dull ache that was manageable. I stopped dreaming about the PowerPoint. I stopped seeing her face in every crowd. I started to look forward to things again, a weekend trip, a new book, a dinner with friends. I dated awkwardly and clumsily and learned that the first dates after a breakup are like testing the waters after a storm. You dip a toe in, then a foot, then you realize you can swim again. There were moments of unexpected grace. Once, months later, I ran into her at a mutual friend's wedding. She looked different, not in a way that suggested she had changed, but in a way that suggested we had both moved on. We exchanged a few sentences that were polite and kind. No PowerPoints, no ferrets, no dramatic gestures, just two people who had once been close and were now strangers with a shared history. I felt a strange gratitude in that moment, as if the universe had given me a second chance at peace. I learned practical lessons too. I learned to trust my instincts. If something felt off, I asked questions sooner. I learned to set boundaries and to respect them. I learned that love is not a commodity to be hedged with backup plans. I learned that people can be both kind and selfish, often at the same time. I learned that humor is a survival skill and that friends are the scaffolding that holds you up when you're rebuilding. The final act of this long, ridiculous saga was not a grand gesture. It was a quiet morning when I made coffee and sat on the balcony and watched the city wake up. The sky was a pale blue and the air smelled like possibility. I thought about the PowerPoint, the ferret, the glowing playlists, and I laughed, not a bitter laugh, but a clear, surprised laugh that felt like a release. I realized I had been carrying a lot of weight that wasn't mine to carry. I set it down. If you're listening to this as a cautionary tale, take this away. Pay attention to the small things before they become big things. Don't ignore the red flags because you want a storybook ending. And if you find yourself in the middle of a breakup that feels like a circus, remember that circus's end. The tent folds up, the lights go out, and the performers go home. You get to go home too, and home can be rebuilt. This is not a neat ending because life rarely gives neat endings. It's a messy, honest one. I'm not a hero in this story. I'm not a villain either. I'm a person who loved, who was hurt, who learned, and who kept going. The breakup taught me to be more careful with my heart and more generous with my laughter. It taught me that sometimes the most radical act of self-love is to walk away and then to keep walking until the path becomes yours again. So here I am telling you this long, continuous rant because that's how it felt, like a single, unbroken thread of bewilderment and growth. If you're in the middle of something similar, know that the chaos will not last forever. You will find your footing. You will find new rituals. You will find someone who doesn't bring a PowerPoint to a conversation about feelings. And if you don't, you'll still be okay. You'll be whole enough to laugh at the absurdity of it all, and that laughter will be the proof that you survived. Make sure to like and subscribe for more.